Alcohol markers have been part of my daily routine for months now, and they have quickly become one of my favorite tools. They're quick to work with and perfect for layering smooth blends, which I really enjoy in my art. At the same time, I know many artists struggle with them. So today, I want to take you through my step-by-step process of drawing a portrait with Ohuhu markers. Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Gabi and I'm a sketchbook artist. You might know me mostly from my Domestika courses, Instagram and TikTok. Today's video makes me especially happy because I'm teaming up with Ohuhu. I've actually been using their supplies for almost half a year now, especially the Honolulu markers, and they've become such an important part of my routine. A lot of the work you've seen from me online was created with them. So when Ohuhu reached out, I was really excited, because it feels so natural to share more of the supplies I already love. And in this video, I get to show you not only the markers I've been using, but also some new products they sent me. And then create a portrait step by step with them. So let's start with the unboxing. I'm going to pull things out one by one and show you what's inside the package. The first thing here is the bamboo organizer. I already have a smaller version of it and I love it. It looks amazing on my desk and I can have everything very neatly organized, which I love. And this one is even bigger, so wow, I will have a lot of markers now. And okay, next up, the colored fine liners, 18 colors in total. I actually need fine liners that are not smudging from the markers, so hopefully this will be that. Then we have the small square marker pad. I think this is going to be perfect for quick sketches or testing blends, especially when I don't want to use up space in my bigger sketchbooks. And here's the larger mixed media pad. It feels heavy and solid, the kind of sketchbook that immediately makes you want to draw in it. Might be even a little intimidating because it feels actually very solid and sturdy, like a big art book. That's probably because of the paper, because mixed media paper always needs to be a bit thicker. I think I'm gonna pick this one for drawing because lately I've been using bigger sketchbooks for my drawings, so I think this will feel right. Now the Ohuhu Nahuku acrylic markers. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. A set of 24. They come in this nice case I will open later. And now something I'm very happy about, the oil-based colored pencils, 72 colors. If you are familiar with my work, you know I used to draw almost only with colored pencils, long before I even touched markers. So I feel a little nostalgic about opening these. I'm excited to see how they work on top of markers because mixing the two mediums is one of my favorite techniques. And finally the big one. This heavy bag has the 216 Honolulu markers. They are amazing! So beautiful. Inside we have also swatch cards and a silicone sheet you can put under the paper so the ink doesn't bleed through. I love little practical extras like this. They show that the company is thinking about how artists actually use their supplies. So that's everything I just pulled out of the shipping box. Now let's open them properly and see what they look like inside. I already made swatches of the alcohol markers because you cannot expect me to control myself when it comes to such beautiful pastel colors, okay? And they look amazing, as you can see. And here's the case with the acrylic markers. Everything is tidy, the colors are arranged so nicely. I love when supplies come in packaging you can keep and reuse and take anywhere with you instead of just one-time box, so this is perfect. The colored pencils look beautiful in their tray. I tried sharpening a few to test them and they don't break, which is always a relief with a big set. Inside the lid there's a little phrase, draw, feel, empower. It's such a small detail, but it makes me smile. It's very nice. I like that slogan. And normally I don't swatch pencils. I usually trust the color I can see on the core. But since this set came with a swatch card, I decided to fill it in. And I'm actually glad I did. It's nice to see all the shades lined up, and it makes choosing colors easier when I'm in the middle of drawing. Now I sharpened the whole set and everything went smoothly, no breaking, no issues. And I just love the look of freshly sharpened pencils lined up and ready to be used. Now the sketchbooks. The small square pad is practical and cute, but my favorite is definitely the larger mixed media pad. The paper is strong and smooth, and I think it's just the right texture for blending markers. That's the one I'll be using for today's portrait. And here's the big set of Honolulu markers. I've already arranged them in the bamboo organizer, and they look so good on my desk. Seeing all the colors lined up like that is instantly inspiring to me. What I really appreciate about Ohuhu is that over time they've been improving their products a lot. I still have some of their older markers that I bought secondhand. Those had an oval barrel and just a number printed on the side. The new ones are more comfortable to hold, and they also have full color names written on them, which is such a big improvement. I've seen artists online giving feedback, and it's clear that Ohuhu listens and makes changes. I really like that they are evolving together with the people who actually use their products. Seeing my desk like this makes me so happy. Everything is set up, colorful, and ready for drawing. I love the bamboo organizers especially. They're practical, they're stable, and they make my desk look beautiful. Seeing all the colors arranged neatly like this is enough to put me in the best creative mood. So, this is where I stopped the unboxing part. Everything is ready, everything is prepared, and now we can finally move on to the drawing itself. Let's draw a portrait. I'm starting with a colored pencil in apricot red. It's a sort of an orange shade, and I like using such tones for the very first lines. I like how soft and smooth these pencils are. They glide across the paper without any effort. It's really pleasant and makes this early stage much easier, because I don't need to press hard to see the lines. At this stage, I only want to capture the general outline of the portrait in profile. Here's the reference photo I'm using. I keep the lines very light and delicate. I'm just marking where the forehead, the nose, the mouth area will be. Nothing too detailed yet, just gentle guides. I also add horizontal guidelines, the level of the eyebrows, the nose line, and how they connect to the ear. This helps me keep everything in proportion. For the hair, I block in a simple bun on the back, just shape for now, not the final detail. What's important is that I don't aim for a photorealistic copy of the reference. Sometimes I don't even want too much resemblance. What I want is my own interpretation of the portrait, something that feels personal and has my style in it. Now I begin adding more definition to the nose, the lips, the eye, a bit of the ear and the hair. It's still not too detailed, but the drawing starts to take shape. Now I switch to another pencil, light vermilion. With this, I clean up the sketch with a kneadable eraser, remove some of the lighter guidelines, and draw more confident lines. I refine the nose, the eyes, the lips, the neck, and gradually add more hair strands. When sketching, I don't fully close every single line. I like leaving small gaps so the sketch doesn't feel like a coloring book outline. I think it keeps the drawing more realistic looking. I also decided to include this star-shaped earring. because I love adding cosmic motifs to my portraits. It's important not to go into single individual hair, just the general form of the hair. I use warm tones for sketches because I like the way they glow under the final layers of markers. Human skin, when lit, often has this warm orange undertone, so even if I cover the sketch later, some of that warmth will shine through, and it makes the portrait feel more natural. So the initial sketch is not just a rough map, it's already the first layer of the final mood. And that's why I usually go for yellows, oranges, and reds as undertones. But you can do the opposite. I also like to sometimes just start with a blue pencil, and it changes the whole mood of the portrait as well. You can try both and see what you like. Or maybe some other color will be better for you. At this point, the sketch feels finished. It's clean enough to work with, but still light and ready for the next step. Before I start coloring, I like to look at the swatches and think about which colors will work best. I partly pick them intuitively. For example, one day I might feel like starting with yellow or pink, on the other with green. I think it's a very important part of art. Just using things intuitively, just because you like them. But for the first layer, I always use a very light color. For this portrait, I decided to start with using cloud blue for the background. Since the portrait sketch is done with warm reds and oranges, which are complementary to blue on the color wheel, I thought it would be a nice contrast. So even though I often begin portraits by laying down skin tones first, this time I wanted to block in the background shape first, almost like a rectangle of sky behind the figure. When applying the marker, I try to keep strokes even, either vertical or horizontal. I usually don't stop at single layer. I like to overlap strokes in both directions so the color blends smoothly. After a moment, the pigment really melts into the paper, giving that seamless look I love about alcohol markers. And this mixed media pad really handles this very well. The ink sits beautifully on the surface. Once the background feels even, I move on to the portrait itself. I start with pastel peach, a color I use a lot for light skin tones. I apply it across the whole face, and in this case also a bit over the hair. The face and hair will separate later, but for now I like to have one unified base. Sometimes I leave tiny highlights uncolored, for example around the eyes or where light hits strongly on the cheek. It's subtle, but it gives me space to build more dimension later. As I said before, the key with these markers is to begin with lighter shades. At least, that's how I use them. You can always deepen them layer by layer, but if you start too dark, you lose that flexibility. That's why I begin with 1 or 2 light coats. It creates a foundation I can build on. Next, I add a second layer of the same color, so pastel peach in this case, focusing on areas where I see shadow, under the jawline, behind the ear, under the nose, on top lip and under bottom lip, or anywhere you can see the shadow in your reference. Once it dries, the difference will soften, but it already gives me a sense of form and light direction. This step is like setting the foundation before adding stronger contrasts. Now I switch to pink lemonade. This is one of my favorite parts of portrait drawing. Adding the natural redness where skin is thinner, the eyelids, cheeks, nose, lips, and ears. Immediately, the face feels more alive, as if blood is flowing under the surface. I like to exaggerate this effect a little, making the cheeks and nose rosier, because it gives the portrait an emotional quality. Sometimes it even makes the face look like it's just after crying, which I find very expressive. To blend it in, I go back with the base color and soften the edges, so the transitions aren't harsh. Not everywhere, just on smooth areas like the cheeks. This blending step is one of my favorite things about alcohol markers, the way they allow colors to melt together so seamlessly. So again, I used pink lemonade for the redness and then blended it a little bit with pastel peach, which was the first color. Then I bring in raw cashew to add slightly deeper shadows, still building step by step, not jumping straight to the darkest values. I also use porcelain blue, which is just a bit darker than the cloud blue of the background. I place it in the shadows of the neck, under the nose, beneath the lower lip, and in the hair. I love using colors like this across multiple areas. I think it ties the portrait together and makes the palette feel more unified. I actually applied it across a large part of the hair too. As you probably know, I often like drawing colorful hair. And since the base under is close to the skin tone, the transition feels natural. The hair becomes more blue, but it's still connected to the rest of the palette. To keep the colors interesting, I bring in pale moss, which shifts the palette slightly into the greens. I use it in the iris, under the neck shadows, and a bit in the hair. It's subtle, but it prevents the blue areas from feeling flat. Back on the skin, I use peachy blush to deepen the cheeks even further. It makes the blush effect stronger and more emotional. Then for contrast, I take golden champagne, which is like a creamy yellow. I like using lively tone like this between darker and lighter values. They prevent muddy transitions and keep the skin glowing. So yeah, I basically use it between the light and dark values as a transition. For the hair, I add a soft lilac color. I think it's called a thistle. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. I love creating those unicorn hair effects with multiple pastel colors. It's playful, but as long as the values are correct, it works beautifully. And whenever I introduce a new color, I like to repeat it elsewhere. So the lilac goes not only in the hair, but in this case also around the eye area. So the whole portrait feels more consistent. I also add pale green in the background because I don't want it to be just a flat blue. Blending in a bit green and lilac makes it feel like the environment and the portrait belong together. Because they have the same shifts of colors and light. Next, I use pale lemon yellow for highlights. Instead of pure white, I prefer this lemony yellow because it adds warmth and vibrancy. I place it on the eyelid, the brow bone, the bun, some on the top of the hair. That's where the sun would naturally hit. And on the star earring, because it's metal, so it would reflect more light. To sharpen the drawing, I return to colored pencils. With ultramarine, I reinforce the eyes, the upper eyelid, the lashes, and the pupil. For warmer areas, I outline with carmine red. For the brows, for example, I use brown. I like mixing colors for line work instead of sticking just to one neutral color. I also smudge some of the pencil lines lightly with my finger. I enjoy texture, but in my portraits, I usually prefer smoother transitions, with maybe a little cross-hatching here and there. I use a white pencil to brighten highlights, but when I don't want them to be stark white, I switch to English rose, which is a pale pink. This keeps the highlights soft and neutral, especially on skin. For subtle cool tones, I add lettuce green in the lower part of the face, where light doesn't hit directly, and ice blue near the temple and in the hair. Repeating these colors helps unify the palette. I also add freckles with cinnamon, one of my favorite textures to break up the smoothness of the skin. Freckles add realism and personality to a face. At this point, I noticed the jawline was a little too sharp, so I picked up an acrylic marker from my new set. The blue seems very similar to the one I painted the background with, so I think they should match. One of the things I love about acrylic markers is that you can easily correct or soften areas just by adding next layers. I used a shade that blended with the background to cover part of the chin and smooth out the jawline. This way I made it less pointy. I also used a soft pink to tone down the upper part of the chin, just under the lips. It's a subtle difference, but now it doesn't bother me anymore. Then I switched to fine liners, which let me add sharper contours where I wanted more definition. I rarely stick just to black outlines, even though I really like this bold effect. But instead, I usually prefer to play with colors and match them to the area. So for warmer tones, I used an orange and pink fine liners. I think it gives the portrait more harmony and keeps it from looking flat. Then I went back in with alcohol marker in Blue Dusk to deepen some of the shadows in the hair. I felt it was still a bit too flat, and adding the cooler, darker tone gave the hair more depth and dimension. What is amazing is that the fine liners dried quite fast and they didn't smudge from the markers. I had a pretty bad accident lately with some random fine liner, and I had to save my drawing by pasting a sticky note to my sketchbook and a drawing on top of it. So these are lifesavers. I know for a fact I'm gonna use them a lot. At this stage, my process becomes very back and forth, and I don't introduce new colors anymore. I pick up one from my existing palette and add a little here and there, but I also use their darker tones to deepen the values. So I add darker shadows for dark brown, stronger highlights with a white acrylic marker, and I add more definition in the hair with fuchsia blue. Fuchsia blue. When it comes to the pencils, I think some of the color names could be clearer, but the shades themselves are beautiful, and I usually just go by the color I see. I love layering pastels like this because they create a soft but complex surface. They are all light colors, so they don't interfere with the form and values. Instead, they just add more playfulness to the picture. For the sweater, I didn't want to go into too much detail. Instead, I outlined it with different colors to give it a slightly fuzzy textured edge. I like to draw one part of the picture much more rendered, like the portrait here, and the other more symbolic. I think it gives lightness and a quick sketch vibe to the whole portrait. Then I added some final touches, like final shadows, some white highlights. So step by step, the portrait gained more dimension until it felt finished. So here it is, the finished portrait. I didn't use a huge number of alcohol markers, but I combined them with acrylic markers, fine liners, and pencils. That mix is what makes the drawing rich and layered. The palette is consistent across all mediums, with lighter and darker tones of the same colors. Working with these supplies has been such a joy. The pastel tones of the Ohuhu markers are still my absolute favorite. They blend so smoothly and allow for endless layering. The bamboo organizers are just must-have for me. Having everything arranged on my desk keeps me inspired. The fine liners are wonderful too, because they don't smudge when I layer markers on top. The pencils feel soft and smooth, and they blend with the markers very nicely. As for sketchbooks, the mixed media pad worked really well, though it does bleed through, you need to know that. For me that's fine, because I can always use the back of the page for gouache or other stuff. But if you want to draw markers on both sides, it's something to keep in mind. Overall, I'm very happy with the process and these supplies. I'll definitely keep using them. Thank you so much for watching, and a big thank you to Ohuhu for sending me all these amazing materials. If you have questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments. And I'd also love to see your marker drawings. So feel free to share them on social media and tag me, especially if you drew with me and this video. Thank you again, and see you in my next one. Bye!